What's up, Dirtbags? Welcome back to Dirtbag Therapy, the podcast where we celebrate the wild, the free, and the slightly smelly. I'm your host, Danielle, and today we're diving into the world of thru hiking with dogs. Such a cool topic, sort of a contentious one. But my guest, Bailey Bremner, has put in serious miles with her trail dogs by her side, and she's here to share what that's really like. The challenges, the rewards, and the unique bond that comes from covering long distances together. We talked about keeping a dog happy and healthy on the trail, the toughest moments, the best memories, and what she's learned from experiencing the wilderness with a four-legged hiking partners, I should say. So lace up your boots, leash up your adventure pup, and let's hit the trail. Yeah, again, thanks for coming on. How did you fall in love with the outdoors and then backpacking specifically? What's your origin story?
So I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. Grew up there, mostly did car camping and some bobber fishing with my family, but I think I've just always had sort of an affinity for the outdoors. I remember from a young age being like, Mom, Dad, can we please move to the mountains? And they're like, oh, sorry, can't really do that. And even from like high school, really loving when I visited Durango and that kind of thing. That's when I was kind of introduced to the Colorado Trail. So when I was in undergrad, I started hiking more on my own with my terrier Skittles, and then eventually my old German Shepherd Prima. Did an internship in Illinois as part of my undergrad and realized that I could not exist without the mountains and that I was so lucky to live and grow up in Colorado. As I was getting ready to graduate with my bachelor's degree, trying to think like, what am I going to do? I had recently decided to kind of switch career goals. I kind of joked with my roommates about hiking the Colorado Trail, and it didn't end up happening that summer. But the next summer after that, I attempted to thru hike the Colorado Trail with my dogs. They did not end up finishing that time, but I did, and I was just head over heels about it. I loved it and wanted to do another one. And so I did the Great Divide Trail the following summer in 2019 with one of my really good friends that I met on the Colorado Trail, and then have just kind of gone from there. So I, after the Great Divide Trail, hiked my own about 750-mile loop around the San Luis Valley in Colorado. And that was the first time my dogs finished a thru hike. It was self-supported with cached foods. This was during 2020. And then the following year I lived in Alaska, then came back and thru hiked the Continental Divide Trail with my dogs. Did the Pinhoti Trail that next spring with the dogs. My own cross Colorado route called the Columbine Route from New Mexico to Wyoming with the dogs. Everything else has been with the dogs. I'll just say that instead of repeating. Yeah. And then in 2023, I hiked my own original route from Canada to Mexico through Idaho on the Idaho Centennial Trail, Nevada and Arizona, with half of it being on the AZT. Finished that, came back to Durango and got a teaching job, and then last summer attempted to hike Andrew Skirka's Alaska 4-range route with my boyfriend and the dogs. We did about 200 miles before there was just too much snow. Called that off, came back, and then thru hiked the Colorado Trail, and then plenty of other backpacking trips in between. But that's kind of my origin, and then I guess, as people would say, hiker resume.
Yeah, it's impressive. If you were to just guess off the top of your head, how many miles, lifetime miles, do you think you've crushed down?
It's hard to know.
Yeah, I guess with and without dogs, just total number.
Yeah, so from part of it, since I've done a lot of like self-made routes, makes it a little bit harder to guess. I think probably less than maybe what I think it is, just from going a little bit slower. My guesstimate for thru hiking for me is about 8,500, but that's not including weekend trips or day hikes. With that, it's probably a lot more. I have no idea. Dang. My terrier Skittles and then my old German Shepherd Prima have done or did about 7,500 miles-ish by my guesstimation.
That's super impressive. I'm going to pause 1 second.
Yeah.
My dogs are, my corgi, you could probably tell I kept like pushing. He kept thinking my hand was a chew toy. So had to send in reinforcements to Pause the corgi mouthiness. And I know when you wrote in, Prima has passed. Sorry for your loss. I would say a pet, but they're more than that, right? Especially, I can and can't imagine. I've done a bit of hiking with my husky mix, but nothing on the level like you. So just that bond that you must have had, and spending so much time outside and really getting to know your pets. I'm sure you guys had such an incredible bond. But I guess, yeah, that goes into my next question. What's a moment with Prima on the trail that, looking back, really encapsulates your bond?
Yeah, I think there's so many. I mean, she just absolutely loved it. I think there's a few moments I can think of. There's been definitely a few times, one time on the Pinhoti Trail where we did like a 20-mile day, and then one time I did an accidental 26-mile day hike with the dogs, where came home and she just, I was pretty beat after hiking in the San Juans that many miles, and she just got her toy and wanted to keep playing. It's like, all right, Prima.
She still had energy after that.
Oh, yeah. And that was a day hike, so it's a little bit different than backpacking. Right. But even on the Pinhoti Trail, she did that a couple times too. It really just depended on the trail we were doing. She always had very sensitive feet. But I think too, just how much she loved it. She passed away pretty suddenly. We did the Colorado Trail, as I mentioned, this last summer in 2024. Did a few day hikes and a 30-mile, was I guess more like 45-mile trip around Chicago Basin, and just loving it, tearing it up, hiking off trail. And then we're trying to attempt to do the Hard Rock 100 route in the early fall. And the day we left, still, she was tearing it up, running up the mountain. And then that's when she got sick on that trip. She had been sick, but started showing symptoms. And the fact that she was masking her symptoms that well, that she was running up the side of a mountain at 10,000, 11,000 feet is wild. But I think it also just shows how much she loved being out there and how excited she was about it. So,
yeah, absolutely. How old was she, and what did she pass from?
Yeah, so she was 11 years old when she passed away, and we're not 100% sure. She became really wobbly. We found out she had really low glucose levels. She had a mass in her lungs, and so we're not sure if it was lymphoma. We ruled out a insulinoma from a different blood test, so it happened very, very fast. From the wobbling on that backpacking trip, it was 2 weeks, and living in a more remote area, a week of that was just spent waiting for blood results to come back, and she really went down pretty fast after that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. It never gets easier, I'm sure you've had other pets, and I call them furry, they're furry family members. That's really what they are. It never gets easy. So I have an 11-year-old in the house, and she's been my adventure buddy since she was 10 weeks old. And then my shark-toothed corgi, he's going to be 2 next month. So, yeah, when my 11-year-old goes, it's going to be I don't know, it's going to be so hard. So, and I've not even done half of or probably a quarter of the time outside, bonding in such a different way in the outdoors as you have. So, yeah, and dogs have such a different way of experiencing the world. And I'm sure you've thought about this too. What are they thinking? What are they seeing? How are they seeing it? How are they smelling? How are they hearing? Everything's so amplified with them, especially hearing and smelling. How did hiking with Prima change the way you see the trail?
Yeah, I think definitely when I hiked the Colorado Trail, part of the reason I ended up sending them home was just that disconnect between what I had kind of in mind for the hike and what the dogs needed on the hike. I think hiking with them and going back and not just giving up on that has definitely taught me to, slow down a little bit, enjoy days off a little bit more. I had to make some compromises on how I tackle my hike, but on the flip side, I have a lot more time to take pictures and look at the flowers and all the little things. And, dogs very much live in the moment, I think. And so taking more time to live in the moment and appreciate what's all around you, whether that's the desert, the mountains, what have you.
Right. Do you feel like I guess it maybe depends. It depends on the trip. And it looks like you put a ton of preparation into the trip, depending on what you're planning and how many miles you're planning to do. What do you prefer? Obviously, you have some preference to hiking with dogs versus not. I guess where are you at with that now? And
yeah,
you have another dog now too?
Yeah, so I once my other dog passed away, we had about 2 or so months without a dog, and I just hated it. The house was way too quiet. Just really struggling quite a bit, and I still have my original terrier, Skittles, as well, but yeah, just so quiet and just missing a lot of the quirks and the silliness that my German Shepherd had. And my friend who I got my German Shepherd from, Prima from, had been trying to get me to take a male puppy for a while, since before Prima passed away. And so I ended up with him, and his name is Brix, and he was about 5.5 months when I brought him home. So he's about 9 months now when we're recording this. So it's been quite the adventure with him and having a puppy and a lot of energy, and dealing with the upsides and happiness of, there's so much energy in life and so much potential, and the downsides of the overwhelm of starting over from square one with training, and just some of the guilt and the things that come, I think, for a lot of pet owners when you're making that transition.
Yeah.
But as far as hiking with dogs, I pretty much never go without them. I don't really see myself going without them. I just don't even plan to go places like national parks where they can't go. The Colorado Trail and Great Divide Trail are really the only things I've done without them. And now that I figured out that it is possible to through hike with them, if you are patient enough and flexible enough, then I think there's plenty of other places to go explore together, and just being flexible, like with the puppy, just taking it slower and just changing our trips a little bit. Can we go on a pack rafting trip instead? Or just, how can we be creative about adjusting our plans and expectations to incorporate the dogs into the trip?
Yeah. His name's Brix?
Yeah.
Do you sort of have the same plan for him as you did with Prima? I would make that assumption based on your previous answer.
Yeah, we're training him up so that he's already gone on several backpacking trips, and trying to teach him how to be a good little trail dog so that hopefully someday he can go on big trips too.
Yeah, and not chase grizzly bears or moose or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah. That would always make me nervous. I know my dog really well, and she's incredible off leash. But we had never come upon a large animal or anything like that. With as much time as you've spent on the trail, I'm sure you've come across some crazy animals or some crazy stories when you were with the dogs long distance hiking.
Yeah, we've encountered a lot of animals. I think a lot of people have the perception that if you have a dog with you, you're not going to see as much wildlife, which has not been the case in my experience. We've seen your standard fare, deer, elk, that kind of thing, marmots, but definitely seen a handful of black bears on our different trips. We've seen at least 1 or 2 grizzlies when we lived in Alaska. Plenty of moose, especially when we lived in Alaska. We saw them at least 2 or 3 times a week just walking around the neighborhood. I think the coolest animals we've seen a handful of porcupines. We saw 4 different porcupines last summer. Have seen a family of river otters when we were hiking the CDT, which was really cool because we were standing on the side of the road between the Tetons and Yellowstone and just could watch them playing in the Snake River. And then I think my other favorite is we saw a badger when I was hiking in Idaho a couple years ago. So
nice.
Pretty neat too.
I'm so jealous about the otters. They're my favorite. They're such funny little guys. They're just always down to party, It's, God, how are you always having so much fun? Well, you're always in the water playing around. So, yeah, just their personalities are so playful. It's so funny. It's so fun to watch them.
Yeah, the dogs really liked watching them too, which was nice because we were up above them, like I said, on the road, kind of looking through the guardrail.
Yeah.
So it was little doggy TV for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure the otters were just like probably didn't even know you
Not
were
phased,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, not phased, even if they knew, probably. That seems like their personality. Just be like, we're having more fun than you. We don't need to pay attention to what you're doing. If back to Prima, you know, in our sort of dialogue back and forth, I know like the first piece of what you wrote, you wanted to make sure to honor her and sort of talk about your grief and those things. So, I mean, this whole thing won't be just about her. You know, we've talked on a little bit about your other dog, your new puppy, and Skittles. Oh my gosh, I love that name. We can tap into Skittles too. We'll want to taste the rainbow, you know? But if Prima could have written a guidebook for other trail dogs, what kind of wisdom do you think she would have shared?
Ooh. Probably would have said something about staying close. She was very, very good about staying very close and never wandering off or getting interested in other things. I could cowboy camp with her out under the stars and never had to worry about her running off, walked along highways, and she never, had to worry about her getting run over or anything like that. So I'd say that's one thing. She loved swimming. She loved trying to eat marmot poop, especially at the end. So she'd probably say something about where to go find the marmots and their little holes. Same with horse poop. I know it's gross. I'm sure some people are listening.
No,
that's like, ugh, but it's like
that's
it makes
part
them
of
happy. So
right.
it's like their favorite thing.
Yeah, that's part of like being a dog mom too. You know, yeah, dogs like disgusting things. Hey, there's this tasty little snack called a marmot turd. You guys should check it out. It's in chapter 3 of my guidebook.
But yeah, she loved sleeping out in the sun, loved playing with her toy. I'd always bring a toy for her when we'd go backpacking or through hiking so she could play with it. Loved all the extra treats and snacks in town, I think. She got quite spoiled that way. Yeah, I think those are probably her big hitters. She was never a big swimmer. She learned how to like lay down in the water and cool off her last year or two. It took a while. She was tolerant of people, but she mostly just liked hanging out, I think, and just spending time outside and all the smells and different things to look at and run around. So
yeah, sounds like the perfect trail dog, honestly. So I always say about some dogs, my dog isn't like particularly like friendly with people either, or with other dogs. She really has it has to be like a certain type of dog that she wants to play with. I think that's like such an amazing thing, actually, that she doesn't have sort of like the worst part of her is that she doesn't really have like a preference for most dogs and people. She just ignores them, worst case. So they sound like they have some maybe similarities with that. So, well, obviously, like I'm sure with the buffer time between, and even now because Brix isn't fully trained up, but like with your grief, with losing Prima, like, and her being such a big part of your life in the outdoors, like, how is your life in the outdoors and just like adventuring sort of changed and looked different since her passing?
yeah, so I think, the morning when she passed away, I knew right away it was a Sunday, and I knew there was no way I was going to be able to go to work the next day, so I made sure to take that off. And then my first thought was, I don't want to stop backpacking because of this, especially since I still have my other dog, Skittles, and that's something she really enjoys doing too. So that's the first thing I asked my boyfriend, or one of the first things when we got home was, do you want to go on an overnight trip tonight? Because I don't want to just wait and then have that like dread of going without her. So I think that was one thing that was really helpful, because that first trip was definitely very odd and off without her there, and just so, awkward with the big tent, not having her in the big tent, and just kept looking for her, like everybody does at home and stuff too, similar, just out on the trails instead. She's used to always being there and always behind you. So I think that was a big thing, was just getting right back on the horse right away and not letting that become a thing. As far as being different, in a lot of ways it's been easier with a smaller dog, less food to carry, less water to deal with. There's cons too, having that extra little personality to run around and do things. Of course, it's a little different now that I'm in a relationship. I think if it had happened a few years ago, when I was single, it would have been different, not having like the intimidation factor of a bigger dog. But yeah, I mean, definitely she was just so well trained. And so that's been an adjustment with the new puppy, is just, he's doing really, really well. But there's always that, you're always looking. I'm always looking anyways, but definitely much more always looking, feel like you're always on duty, making sure that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing and learning what he's supposed to be learning, so that he can be a good trail dog too, and not bother other people or get into trouble or learn bad habits. So that's been an adjustment. I know it'll get better over time with more repetition and practice, but it's going to take some time to get there.
Yeah, for sure. How is Skittles been doing with all of that? I mean, that's the bond between the two of them, I'm sure was so strong too. And now Skittles is in sort of, you know, older, mature and mentor dog mode.
Yeah. So she definitely seemed quite confused for the first week or two. It's hard to tell because she is dealing with her own health issues at her own health issues at the moment that we're trying to get sorted out, which I think is affecting her energy level a little bit. So it's hard to know what is from what. It's just very quiet and down. And when we're home, she's usually just napping and hiding in the corner and doesn't want to interact with the puppy. But I think that's the interesting thing, is once we go out and go backpacking, she's much perkier, much more excited, running around, looking for things. And you can tell that's like her happy place too, is just being out and about. So she tolerates the puppy. She tolerates most of my shenanigans with her normal terrier attitude, but just getting along.
She's so cute. I was watching some of your videos. It's just like doot, 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 just kind of bopping along the little penguin line. So cute.
She's a tough little dog. She's probably the best hiking dog I've ever met. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, she's so cute. Have you found rituals, or have you started rituals or places or ways to honor Prima's spirit?
I'm not sure yet. I've been wanting to get, they make like cremation jewelry and things like that, but I just haven't found one that speaks to me. And now I'm kind of getting panicky because I'm like, it's been a few months and I haven't done that to like be able to
take
bring
your
her with
time.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause you want to do it right, you want to do right by her. So
yeah, I think it's hard letting go. We have worked our way through most of her old toys now that were left in the house, because of course the puppy is a puppy and likes to shred things. So that's been a little hard of just trying to let it go. It's fine. We'll get more toys. You don't need to keep this one dragon toy for the next 30 years.
Oh.
So there's that. I guess ritual-wise, I would probably do something to honor her in the fall when things come back around a little bit more. I would like to make a little memorial video for her on my YouTube channel at some point. Just trying to kind of work through what that looks like for me, I guess, and how to keep her in my life, but also, move on and still live my life and let my current dogs live their life too.
Right. Yeah. Do any particular places come to mind that she especially loved?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't think she necessarily had big preferences on places. She just liked going out anywhere, but she definitely loved going hiking in the San Juans where we live. And there's my secret spot up by Silverton that I know how to get to, and there's not really trails. And so that's definitely a place that I'm looking forward to visiting once the weather gets nicer again.
Yeah. Doing a special little tribute maybe.
Yeah.
So it's been 3 years of getting out at least once a month. Mm-hmm. That's really impressive. What's been the biggest unexpected lesson from that? Do you find yourself, because I know sometimes it's like, oh, I put this sort of thing in my head that I want to do for myself because it's good, but sometimes that can backfire where you're feeling pressured, and then it's doing the opposite of what you're intending to do, which is de-stress and do something that you love.
Yeah, I think for me it's been really good. I have definitely struggled to varying degrees with seasonal depression. I think like a lot of people in the winter, especially as somebody that loves backpacking, the winter has been tough at times, particularly when I lived in Alaska, and it's just like, oh, I just want to see the ground, and be able to sleep outside, and it's really hard. And I love skiing. I'm a big skier too, but backpacking in summer for sure has my heart. And so one thing I think I found that it really helped was the first year I did it, it was like, I think October when I realized like, oh, I've gone on, one trip a month since May. I wonder what happens if I try to keep that up. And what if I plan a trip, or maybe it was the end of November. So I realized it had been like 6 months already. It's like, oh, I wonder if I could keep doing another trip every month until next May. And I found it really helped my mood a whole bunch. It was nice to have something to look forward to, because then I was always planning another trip every month of, even when things were rough at work or feeling kind of down or hectic, it was like, oh, well, I have this trip coming up. So that gave me something to look forward to. It gave me a reason to explore more places. I've definitely gone so many more places backpacking around the Southwest because of it, because I like to try to go new places if I can. And then just see the desert. I've got to see so many different like regions and biomes and things, visiting the Sky Islands and southern Utah. I hadn't done a ton of hiking in Utah at that point. So I've got to explore all these different trails that I wouldn't have seen otherwise, which has been really neat.
Nice. What's on the docket for this coming year? What do you have planned?
Ooh. So I'm honestly a procrastinator, because since I go fairly often, I usually just, my boyfriend and I pick something like the week before. And
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's like Wednesday and we're leaving on like Friday morning. You're like, oh, where do you want to go this week?
Those are the best kind of adventures.
Yeah.
And then you're just kind of like, no pressure to do anything. And you just run into really fun stuff along the way.
And you find really cool stuff that way too, because you're just looking at a map, like, where have we not gone yet? Well, there's this wilderness area. Do you want to go check it out? Sure. How are the trails going to be? I don't know. They might be really terrible. And some fair amount of the time they are, but it's usually you don't see anyone. It's like this super cool area, lots of cool views and things. So found all sorts of like weird little caves and cool rock outcrops and interesting views that way. So yeah, we're pretty flexible. I have like a list of trip ideas that kind of go on, definitely with having a younger dog, and then my little dog Skittles' health up in the air. It's a little hard to plan far in advance, especially for summer. But like we'll probably go backpacking somewhere in Arizona next week for spring break. Have no idea where yet.
Nice.
Still, so somewhere.
Just get out there,
Yeah.
Any idea where in Arizona you might go?
I honestly have no idea yet. So
Yeah,
I know
all
we'll
good.
probably we're going to go skiing in Utah and then probably near Las Vegas. So maybe something there, maybe something around Sedona, maybe something further south near Tucson. Yeah. Who knows?
It will just depend on the flavor of the week.
Yeah, and the weather too. That's part of it too, is we can have that flexibility to kind of look at the weather and like, oh, is there snow? Is there not snow? Places in Arizona still do get snow. But
right. I was going to say northern Arizona can get pretty wily. I was up at the Grand Canyon a couple of years ago. Yeah, we're not predicting snow, and it just started really coming down. So trying to drive out of there was wicked with the snow coming. It was like really heavy snow too.
Yeah. So between that and rain and water sources and everything, or how hot or how windy, like we've had the Painted Desert in Petrified Forest has been on my list for that's a good quick emergency weekend trip if we can't find time otherwise, and we just haven't gone yet because it's breezy there a lot. So just make it up as we go. Yeah,
I love that. What's the wildest thing you've done to make a weekend trip work despite obligations, to try to squeak something in?
Usually we're not super social people, so it's a little bit easier to fit things in. And I try to plan ahead of time. It's nice. I work as a teacher, so my schedule is known fairly far. We have our whole school year schedule published a year ahead, so it makes it a little bit easier to plan. We have 4-day school weeks where I teach, so that definitely helps a lot. So I will definitely admit that's a little bit easier for me, especially with where I live, to get out and adventure. But we did an overnight snowshoe trip for the first time in February, because we thought we might be able to go backpacking at the end of February, like the last 2 days into March, but I was a little nervous to like bank on that just in case something happened. And so we were like, well, what if we just went and snowshoed in like 5 miles somewhere and set up the tent and then snowshoed out? And I have never done that before. I've been snowed on while on through hikes before, but that's usually like, snow, we don't want to get snowed on with my 3-season setup, versus purposefully being like, there's snow on the ground and we're purposefully going to go out and camp in it. And it ended up being a whole bunch of fun. We made a fire, which rarely do. Spent a while collecting wood and had a nice fire and brought all of our warm gear. And it was a ton of fun. And the puppy had a wonderful time because he loves snow and he loves sticks. And so he really enjoyed running around the snow collecting sticks. And yeah, it was unforeseen, but it wasn't necessarily squeezing it in, but it's just something different that we wouldn't have normally done to kind of like make it work.
Nice. What do you teach?
I teach 8th grade math. So
Nice. I too am in public education in New York City public schools. I'm a dean. I deal with the naughty children.
Oh,
I love them.
a wonderful person. I could not. I've gotten much better at following through with my boundaries and expectations, but I would not want to deal with the difficult kids all day.
Yeah, I just feel like being a classroom teacher is like the hardest job. Like to do it and do it well, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like it's everything and more. Like lesson planning for every single day, like, and you're in charge of teaching kids. I don't know. We could just go on and on about it, but this isn't the teaching podcast, right? So, but that's awesome. Thanks for your service. We appreciate you. 8th grade. Woo. They get wily in 8th grade too. They just think they're at the top of the heap.
In the middle school food chain.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're just like, I'm so cool now that I'm in 8th grade. And then the fall from grace hits hard when they hit high school. So
I was gonna say, every time I've mentioned 9th grade, you're gonna see this again next year. You're gonna have to do this 8th grade presentation. They're kind of like, you can tell they're a little nervous underneath, but even if they don't want to show it.
8th grade's a fun year though. I enjoy them. My current year of 8th graders, I like especially love. Really bonded with them last year as 7th graders. So, yeah, we have some transition things that we do too. They have to do like a big like presentation to like, it's like a passage thing. It's actually called passages. But it's basically just like a symbolic, I mean, they actually do have to do something that's tangible, but it's sort of like a symbolic, thing too. So that's fun to see them, like how much they've matured and get up and do like this presentation to basically say that they're ready to pass through middle school into high school. So
yeah, we do a similar, they have to do a presentation with everything that they've learned in each of their subjects with like evidence and like provide examples and samples and kind of like portfolio type items and sports and activities and present to their family and their teachers and try to make it a big deal for them. Nice.
Yeah, it sounds similar to what we do too. That's cool. So yeah, having a teacher and 4-day work week, I'm super jealous of that. I keep like preaching about how that's how we need to save all the teachers that are doing like the mass exit. I mean, that's not the only thing, but I feel like that would cut down on a lot of burnout for a lot of teachers.
It's helped around because I live since it's a rural area, I live in Durango, but I teach outside of Durango, and it makes a huge difference. I mean, it's the main reason why I haven't tried to find a job in Durango where they have 5-day school weeks is I'm like, I don't want to give up the 4-day school weeks. It's so nice.
That'd be heaven. Yeah, that'd be so nice. Do you ever feel like there's a disconnect between teacher you and trail you? Like you're living two separate lives?
A little bit. I'm pretty open with my students about my hiking and stuff. I don't like go telling them all about my YouTube channel and everything, but I'm not like if they find it,
I'm on
cool.
YouTube.
So
yeah, let's go find it.
And part of it for me is I do like freelance gear reviewing and stuff like that too, and so I use that as examples of like, well, in the real world, this is what I'm doing for my other job in the real world. So this is why I want you to do X, Y, Z to try to make things a little bit more tangible, I guess, and relevant to them. I think there definitely is a little bit, it's gotten better. I think when I first started teaching, there was definitely a bigger disconnect as far as feeling like the two worlds didn't go together and struggling with the Sunday scaries and that kind of thing. And now it's just like, just show up and I teach and I go. And I am probably not as dedicated as a teacher as some or a lot of people, but we do good things and I think they're learning and then I go do my thing. So
right. Yeah. I think it ebbs and flows too, right? I think that's good modeling for kids. We're human beings too. I think kids just forget that we're not robots and we don't sleep under our desk. We go home and have a whole family and life outside of this. Yep. But it's such teaching and working in public education is such a personal thing. And there's just a lot of people involved and we're dealing with people's kids. Like, you want to talk about something that parents and just people are so protective over. And have so many opinions about. It's like it's hard to separate or have sort of a separate life from that. You get so ingrained in that and
I
that
think
identity as a
too,
teacher.
yeah. Sorry. I think too, a
Oh,
lot
go
of
ahead.
people very much make teaching their whole identity, as do many through
Mhm.
hikers. And I'm definitely guilty of doing that on the through hiker side. And so maybe part of it for me too is because I came to teaching as kind of like a second career. I studied animal science for my bachelor's and wanted to go to vet school originally. So I have never felt quite as invested in some ways, which might sound really bad on the outside, but more it's not my end all be all. I've wanted to be this since I was 3. I'm going to spend 10 hours on Sunday looking at Pinterest to make my classroom look better the way some people do.
Yeah,
So
it's real.
I enjoy it. I want to change their lives for the better and be a good influence and hopefully teach them some math so that they have good reasoning and logic skills, but it's not, my whole personality is not based around teaching, which I think helps.
Yeah. No, that's real. I think that's a great message. We can be interested in more than one thing. I think that's super healthy and that's good messaging. We don't have to be all one thing, and especially certainly not for our whole lives either.
Yeah.
So, this is a great segue to my next question. If someone's stuck in a cycle of work and routine, dreaming of adventure but feeling trapped, what's your best advice for helping them take that first step? Because we
I
all
think,
started off as rookies at some
yeah.
point, right? Like you had never hiked on a trail before. So now you're a seasoned pro. How did that happen, you know?
Yeah, I think it's hard to find balance, and that is something that I have been working on and will probably be working on for a long time, is that balance, especially as a through hiker, just because it takes so much time. It's hard to take the time off to go on through hikes without either quitting or being retired or having a gap, or, obviously as a teacher I have summers, but as doing longer things like the CDT, I cannot, especially with the dogs, do within a summer break, right? So finding that balance is definitely a struggle. And I think for me, having a work schedule and living in a location that allows me to be able to go on frequent micro adventures really makes a big difference for just how I'm feeling about things in general, work life. It makes working more tolerable when I know I have other things coming up, because everybody goes through ebbs and flows. There's days I leave work going, wow, this is great. I just got to we played games all day and they got it and whatever. And then there's days where there are a lot of behavior problems, and everybody, the weather, whatever it is. And you're just like, why am I even doing this?
Yeah,
Like,
I
is
hate this.
there
I'm
anything else?
leaving. That's the
Yeah.
last time we ever saw Miss
Yeah.
Fisher. She just walked out
So,
the door. Yeah.
there's always going to be good days and bad days. But I think for me, finding that balance of having health insurance, having a stable paycheck was really important for my mental health long term. And then also having that time to get out and adventure. And, I don't know what I'll do long term, but for now, it's something that's working for me. I think if you're trying to do your first big adventure that is more than what you have PTO for, then it's just being disciplined and saving up that money. You don't necessarily have to eat ramen every day, but not eating out at fancy restaurant in town all the time either. Trying to hack rent and that kind of thing as much as you can so that you can save up. And then, job hop or whatever you need to do. You just need to make a plan and make it happen and keep that long-term and short-term goals, kind of both of them in mind, whatever you decide to do, and just commit to making it happen. Because a lot of people are just, I think it sounds like a good idea, that people like the idea of it, but deep down they just don't maybe want it quite enough. It just kind of sounds nice, but they're not really invested, I think is what it is for a lot of people that I've met that are like, oh, wow, I wish I could do that. Well, it's like, probably
Yeah,
in
you
theory,
could.
but maybe not actually. Yeah. But I think the people that really want to do it will find a way. If you're wanting to make it like a repeat kind of thing, especially the trips that are more involved, for me through hiking, I'm sure mountaineering and things like that are the same way, where it takes a month or more at a time, then you're definitely going to have to be a little bit more creative. And I think just not giving up. I did my first through hike over 6 years ago. And like I said, I'm still figuring things out, but it's just kind of keep going back to the drawing board, Just don't accept the status quo. For me, again, kind of going back to that stable paycheck and everything has made a huge difference, because for me, the first few hikes or times I was fine living very stringently, but it's hard to maintain that long term. And some people can. I know some like OG through hikers that have worked seasonal jobs in their 50s or 60s and still doing that or whatever, but especially with the dogs, that's just really not feasible. I've had so many vet bills this year that there's no way to do that on a seasonal income.
Yeah, that's real. And I mean, just their routine stuff, the big once a year annual checkup. But then my oldest dog had a broken tooth a few years ago and then had some extractions. Once the vet got in there, had some extractions in the front too. That was almost $1,000.
Yep.
It was like 100 and something just for a broken tooth. And then there's been the Corgi has picked some things up out on the streets of New York. And so we've had to bring him into the emergency room a couple times. It's people say, oh, they're different than children. Yeah, of course they are. But at the same time, they are a lot like children.
Yeah, every time I go to the vet, it's like at least $500. A lot of times it's $1,000. Anytime there's a blood test, I'm like, oh, here we go. It's worth it, but it's still, it's like, oh, I made more money this year than any other year my entire life. And I spent pretty much everything extra on vet bills.
Thanks a lot, Brix and Skittles. Yeah, I know. Like, I love you guys very much, but both things can be true, that you are pains in the ass and to my wallet, and I love you very much. I'll switch up back to on the dog theme. What's something with or about through hiking with dogs that most people don't realize until they do it? Now, I haven't heard of a lot of people through hiking with dogs, and you're much more in the backpacking through hiking community than I am. I've never through hiked a trail. I've talked a lot about it. I haven't done it yet. I'd love to try to set myself up to do that at some point. I've thought about it with my big dog because I think she could handle it. But again, have never done it. And a lot of the content that I had read was like, don't bring your dog on the trail. Don't do that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've done quite a bit of research on this and follow quite a few pages for through hikers of different trails I've hiked, and also dog specific through hiking pages. I've read lots of blogs because my evolution was not like a straight path. It wasn't like success on the first try. So I did a lot of research before that, but then also after that of like, what can I do different? Like, what are other people's experiences? And then
You're such a teacher. That's such a teacher mindset.
I'm definitely passionate about trying to help other people be more successful. And it's interesting because I think the general average through hiker is generally more against people through hiking with dogs. And the reason why is because a lot of people go out and attempt, especially like the AT in particular is the one I would think of first, and then probably a little bit the PCT. I think more people try to do the AT with a dog than the PCT or CDT. Mm-hmm. Probably between the AT and like the Colorado Trail. But they go out, and like me, they have high aspirations and have tried to do research to the best of their ability. But unless you are out doing multiple trips beforehand, especially like week-long trips or longer and building up, it's just impossible to know what's actually going to happen. And some dogs do really well. But I think the majority, it's just that the owner and the dog is not really on the same page, which was the issue I had. As far as there are going to be problems with the dog, whether it's their feet, whether it's their behavior changing, they're going to lose weight. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. Are you willing to change and or potentially jeopardize your hike or finishing your hike in order to accommodate your dog? And most people think that they are before they leave. Mm-hmm. I thought I was before I left for the Colorado Trail. And then once I got on trail, I realized that at the time it was supposed to be a once in a lifetime hike. Originally I was like, oh, I'm going to do this and then go get my adult job and move on with my life. And so then when that happened, it was like, well, I actually really want to finish this trail. It's like, I grew up near it. I really want to do it. I'm probably never going to do this again. And I think that happens for a lot of people where they realize they enjoy hiking, but not necessarily with their dog or on the same page as their dog. And so that's kind of where the issue comes in. I think kind of along that same lines too, a big challenge people don't expect is the mental aspect of through hiking with a dog. Most people know that there's potential for foot problems or weight problems or dealing with carrying their dog's stuff or what have you. They don't realize how hard that's going to be on you as the owner who is responsible, especially since dogs can't communicate the same way a child could or a partner could or whoever, right? So you're trying to interpret what's going on, how to accommodate them, how to keep them happy, especially if there's other hikers around. I think it's much more challenging on a busy trail like the AT or the Colorado Trail because you're feeling that like vortex and that pressure from everyone else. And some people that's not an issue, but I think for me, I noticed especially that you see all these people hiking past you and you're like, okay, bye. Like, I'm stopping for the day because my dog can't go any further or needs a break. That can be mentally challenging, that and just feeling like you're letting your dog down, whether you send them home or keep them on the trail. So
Yeah.
it's a lot to handle. And again, I think the biggest solution to that is trying to do more weekend trips and then week-long trips and then kind of build up if you can. But for a lot of people, that's not possible if you're trying to save up all your PTO, to get paid while you're gone or what have you. So
Yeah, makes sense. If you could go back to one of the first times or even the very first time that you started this, I know you said you obviously would do some sort of a build up before a big long hike, but is there anything that you would change or tell yourself knowing what you know now with all the miles you put on?
yeah, I'm not sure, just because, like I said, I had heard that advice from somebody else at one point online to try to do more shakedown trips. And I did like 3 overnight shakedown trips before the Colorado Trail, but they were just one-nighters. And it was hard because I was working a seasonal job in Kansas, in Western Kansas. So I was already driving back and forth to Colorado quite a bit, and it would have been really challenging without putting my hike back a year. I had kind of started collecting gear a little bit before that, so maybe I would have changed trying to do an overnighter the year before. At that point, I didn't think I'd be able to hike the Colorado Trail. So I'm not sure what I would have changed in my situation, other than maybe just not sending my dogs home right away and instead taking time off. Because I had some time built in to hike with them, and I ended up sending them home and finishing much faster than I had planned. I just didn't know at the time, and I didn't want to cause my dogs discomfort, which is great because I think that's, of course, the flip side too, is knowing when to push your dog, and that kind of thing is something that you need to learn over time with your own dog, since all dogs are different. So I'm not sure it would have necessarily changed anything. I think for me, that struggle was something that made us stronger as a team and taught me a lot. That has now helped me out now, where with my puppy, things are going pretty great at the moment. And I don't foresee any issues through hiking with him once he gets older and kind of builds up that stamina just from age and experience. So
Yeah, that makes sense. If someone told you they wanted to start hiking with their dog tomorrow, what's one unexpected thing that you'd warn them about? I know you've gone into quite a bit of detail with it, but if there's anything you've missed or anything that's like, ooh, yeah, this is what I would say.
hiking, backpacking, or through hiking more specifically?
Let's go through hiking.
Okay. I think it would partially depend on the trail and the dog if I had more information on that. For example, I know there are still foot issues on the AT with dogs, especially like in the whites, just because it's more granity. But overall, in my experience from hiking the Pinhoti and the Southern Appalachians, it's much more humid and there's a lot more leaf litter. So I think there are the potential for less foot problems compared to the Western United States, where it's very dry. So I think if somebody were planning to hike in the Western United States, or specifically the CDT, there's a lot of road walking, particularly if you want to do alternates around the national parks. So I would warn people that the road walking can be really hard on dog feet, and to expect that to be a problem. Because I've talked to a couple people that even though they'd done another long hike on the East Coast like the AT, their dog really struggled on the CDT because of that. Breed specific, I think if you have a dog that's a rescue, has any sort of like separation or like guarding type tendencies, particularly like for me with German Shepherds, my previous German Shepherd, and I've heard this happen with other dogs, when you're hiking, since your whole environment has changed and your tent is now like your home, they can become a little bit resource guardy sometimes. And it's not necessarily that they're aggressive, but they can be a little barky just because they're saying, well, this is my home. There's all these strangers. And like my dog Prima was usually fine with other hikers during the day, but if we had set up camp, she'd get a little bit weird. And it was always fine for me because most of the trails I've hiked have not had that many hikers. The CDT had probably the most, and then by the time I hiked the Colorado Trail, she was a lot more laid back. But I could see, and I've heard of like hiking the Appalachian Trail, there's a lot of people. So if your dog has those kind of tendencies, that can definitely really become a big stressor for your hike and then for people around you potentially as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, you really do your research and experience really comes through and with your responses and how many experiences you've had with your dogs. Do you have, yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
I just thought of something else that's like really big
perfect.
and important.
Shoot.
I think a lot of people too, sorry, because this is definitely a hot topic. If you are planning to have your dog wear a pack, there are some dogs that finish with a pack that is worn at least part of the time, but I do not really know of any dog that has successfully completed through hike, particularly longer than 500 miles, where they're wearing a pack every single day. So do not count on your dog wearing gear. I think the majority of repeat through hiker dogs, which there are not very many of us, but the ones that do, rarely carry a pack. And if they do, they don't wear it all the time. And it's very light, less than 10% of their body weight. So that would be definitely a big misconception, I think. People go into it planning to have their dog carry stuff. And then usually at some point, they will almost always end up carrying at least part of their dog's gear.
Yeah, that's a good pro tip.
Sorry,
No, you're all good. Jump in whenever. Let's see. If you, I was going to plug your, like all your resources. Let's wait until the end. Remind me too. Okay. I just have a couple more questions, so we're getting there.
Yeah.
If you had unlimited time and money for one ultimate adventure with the dogs, like you could go international. I'm not sure that's been thought of. That would be quite the logistical ordeal to figure out. At least getting on a plane, maybe not so much Canada or whatever, but because you don't necessarily have to get on a plane to go up there and hike. But one ultimate adventure, where would it be with them, with the dogs?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I think part of it too, part of my problem or dilemma here is that I've had like these ultimate adventures planned and then I've completed them. And so now you're trying to like come up with a new one. I have thought a little bit about international. I don't think now that I have a big dog, it's probably not going to happen. I think you'd have to go for a long time. I know, there's that guy that walked around the world with his dog over the course of like 7 years. So it is possible, but I think it needs to be like a longer term thing like that. It's like, I would love to go to Nepal someday, but I think the flip side or like the caveat that makes me a little bit nervous about that is of course, like vet care. Mm-hmm. I've hiked in a lot of remote places, including in Alaska with my dogs. And so I'm willing to a degree to take on that risk, I think more so than a lot of people. But knowing that if you went to like the Himalayas, there really is not going to be any sort of vet care anywhere, just thinking about more like the village life and things like that. So there's a part of me that wants to say that, but realistically, I'm not sure I would ever feel super comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I've thought about, I would love to do the Four Corners Loop someday. That's a route that a guy made up a couple years ago. That's around the Four Corner states, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico. That's been on my list. Looking at other things, I would love to do a Brix Range Traverse someday if I can ever get past some of my fears of whitewater rafting, that kind of thing. Looking a little bit now, I've been curious for last week about the Mackenzie River, paddling the Mackenzie River in Northwest Territories, Canada, with the dogs. It's all flat water, but it's out there. Just like things like that. I come up with things randomly and then eventually do them and then cross them off the list.
Yeah, so some other adventures other than just through hiking, backpacking. Yeah.
I think that's the evolution for a lot of people, is eventually bringing in more modes of travel the more you do. But.
Yeah. Does Skittles like the water?
She tolerates it. She's kind of like how Prima was, where she will get in if it's very hot to cool off, but she's not a big swimmer. I think she likes kind of hanging out in the raft, but she's not interested in jumping in or swimming or anything like that. Yeah. We have not put the puppy in the raft yet. That's on our to-do list, but he likes the water much more than any other dog I've had. So we'll see how that goes with him.
Might have to do some water adventures for the little water baby.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, both my dogs really love the water. The big dog really, really loves the water. And then we just taught the little one last year. We're not around a lot of clean water sources in New York City. I'm not gonna let my dog swim in stuff around here, but we go upstate, or when we go travel. Or I'm originally from Minnesota, so there's tons of very clean rivers and lakes and things. So we were back home for a couple of months in the summer, and the corgi was following the lead of the big dog, and it was very cute. He like is obsessed with the water now, so it's awesome. To finish out, I have a fun would you rather question for you.
I love would you rather questions.
Same. I actually like when I used to lead outdoor trips for 21 days. That was one of my first jobs out of college, was working with adjudicated kids. They were court ordered to do some wilderness therapy time. And so to pass the time, we would try to have some sort of dialogue, some sort of fun dialogue with the kids, especially on backpacking trips, because it could get pretty grueling with the miles and stuff. So we would come up with some really grotesque would you rather questions on some of those trips. But would you rather fight off an aggressive raccoon for your snacks, or hike 10 extra miles with soaking wet boots?
Probably hike 10 extra miles with soaking wet boots. I've had enough wildlife encounters. I had an unfortunate porcupine encounter the first time I hiked the Colorado Trail, and that was no fun. And then when I was hiking through Nevada on the Western Water route, I used a bat as a pillow, and I had to get treated for rabies without health insurance, and that was
Oh no.
very expensive. It still is very expensive. It's going to be very expensive for several more years. So I would rather avoid raccoons since they have rabies. Now, I've had some of the shots, but I still would rather not go there.
Yeah. I feel it. Raccoons, man, especially city raccoons. They're just
So fierce.
Oh my gosh, yeah. They're something. And they know it. I don't see raccoons in New York City. We have our fair share of rats that are the size of raccoons. But yeah, I lived in Minneapolis for a long time. They would come out of the shadows and make all sorts of crazy noises, and they could like flip the garbage can lids open and get into the trash, and it was crazy. But yeah, I haven't really seen any here. Now that I'm thinking about it.
We've had some where I live get into the dumpster in my little complex. I love raccoon memes. I'm all about raccoon memes, but in real life, I would rather they stay away.
Right, I know. I've seen, they're on social media, people have raised baby ones, and they seem really cute, but they get ferocious.
Yeah.
If you want to give yourself a shout out, so if people are more curious after sort of hearing the episode and have a curiosity, you seem like the pro in this area. Not you seem like you are. Where can people find you on your social media?
Yeah, probably the best place would be my YouTube channel. My handle is The Most Important Step. I have plenty of videos on there. I'm working on releasing more educational videos again, so there should be more action there in the coming weeks and months. That's the best place, and then you can always reach out if you have questions. Yeah, I'm around on Instagram and stuff too, but it's more just like fun stuff there. So
yeah, more of the educational on
handle,
YouTube.
yeah.
So if somebody were curious to go find an answer to a bunch of their questions or just general questions, I'm sure you already have quite a few videos, but then you're going to add to that.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, awesome. Hey, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun to talk about everything.
Hey, y'all, really hope you enjoyed that episode, and I wanted to let you know that I'm launching a Patreon to help keep Dirtbag Therapy alive and growing. Right now, there are only 2 levels of support offered, and the goal is to build some momentum. If we get this thing off the ground, I'll add more perks like exclusive content, live Q&As, and even some road trip postcards. This summer, I am hitting the road to bring you more adventure content, wild stories, and deep dives into dirtbags that I meet on the road and their lifestyle. But that takes time, gear, and gas money. If you want to be a part of this from the start, here's your chance. So if you join the crew, look in the show notes, and the link is below. And if you can't support financially, no worries at all. Rating the show, subscribing, and sharing it with a friend helps so much. So let's keep this adventure rolling. Really appreciate your support.